More music.
Hey everyone, welcome to Mole Music. We're a bunch of underground artists digging our ways through the muck trying to figure out where up is. And today we've got a good buddy here digging with us, Adam Neely. Welcome.
It's so good to be here amongst all of the muck.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Hell yeah.
You're
We're
a
digging, guys.
dirty guy.
I am very dirty.
You've always been pretty dirty.
I've been the dirtiest person that I know in my family. But that's why we're here, and we've had such a good connection over the years. Is we're very dirty people.
You do seem like you have a relatively clean family, in comparison.
Yeah, my mom's pretty clean. My dad's clean. My sister's very clean, but I'm very dirty. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Wow.
Now you've been touring for the last, maybe 2 years. You've been touring about as much as you could say as nonstop as I think you can be without just going insane. So how has that affected your dirtiness?
Well, it's important to always, I'm going to say once a week, do laundry. That's important for the dirtiness. Most of the time, showers are also important. I've learned that, you need to take a shower pretty frequently, once a day, usually, I would say.
That's impressive that you even think to do that.
I know. And venues these days have showers in them. And they're not very clean showers, but if you wear sandals and if you bring your own towel, you can clean yourself very nicely while you're on the road and stay clean, even though I'm a very dirty boy most of the time.
Wow,
yeah.
so your clean family kind of taught you about sandals and these other things.
these
cool.
big inventions.
I have a
Yes.
question about the shower. So,
Said Justice Cow.
do you
Welcome.
bring your own? Thank you. Do you bring your own shampoo, soap, or do you find that it's more of an adventure to just use what's around, little shards of soap left over, random bottles with full of water that have a little bit of soap left? What's your style with that?
That would be a solid
Yeah,
dirty experience, I feel. Just taking random bars of soap and
It's just an adventure.
Yeah, the mosaic of soap that I collect at the end of every tour. I make little quilts of soap.
Whoa.
No, soap quilts.
Sign me up for that.
I normally use a Dr. Bronner's. That they have the bars Dr. Bronner's soap. I normally bring my own.
Okay.
I'm a big Dr. Bronner's fan. If you don't know Dr. Bronner's, it's this brand of soap that is made by some flavor of Christian evangelical, or maybe I don't actually know what Dr. Bronner is, but there's always these really long quasi-religious screeds on the soap that you can read. But they're great. They're all natural hemp oil soaps, so that's why I use them. Not necessarily the evangelism, but because they are very nice on the road.
Yeah,
That's true.
one of my hopes is that this podcast blows up to the extent that they could let me write one of the Dr. Bronner soaps, because I have so many Bible adjacent ideas lately, and I've mentioned them
true.
on the podcast. They
you've been bringing up
mostly
more
end
and more
with-
of them. I was actually thinking about that the other day.
Yeah. Well, then Hugo Moreau is here as well, and
Mole
of
Hugo.
course
Hello.
Mole Hugo. Of course, we're
Thank
all
you, Mole
here
Ben.
every time. Yeah.
Also on the show is Molben.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Welcome to me and Adam. Now you're a mole. Congrats.
Well,
I
we'll
am
see at the end of the
so-
episode.
Yeah.
But
Adam, I've got so many
Guys,
Bible
do you think I
adjacent
could-
stories.
Do you think I could be a mole? Do you
Yeah.
really
Well,
think I
you've
could be?
definitely paid your dues. I mean,
yeah, I
Okay.
think you could.
I just want to take a moment to honor you and for your career, because I feel like you've really paid your dues.
That's true.
Yeah. I just want
I
to honor you
appreciate
in
it.
that way.
Thank you. I feel deeply honored. Now,
I love it.
As a potential mole, I'm very excited to learn about all of your Bible adjacent ideas, Ben.
So I'll say them real quick because I've said them before, but Abraham does everything he can, is a very good boy, follows all of God's laws so he can go up to heaven and circumcise God. That's number one. Number two.
That's the video game,
is-
right?
Yeah, I'm making a video game thing of that. And then number two is a man. He's a really good carpenter, just like Jesus, and he's working really hard, but he cuts his finger off, and so he like misses the cut to be like the next Messiah. So it's not his body that gets imbued with the Spirit of God, but he's like jealously following along as Jesus is progressing up the ranks, and he's just watching as a fellow carpenter, his fingers all cut. 20 years later, he's at his son's first birthday party. Everyone's sitting around the big Last Supper table, getting real excited about this birthday party, and then the carpenter goes, and he coughs up, what is it? His missing finger. And what's on it? A tattoo. And what's the tattoo? His birthday. And then my next idea...
Call Dan McClellan. We got some new interpretations of the Bible. He's the TikTok Bible guy that I highly recommend everybody check out. He has some great stuff talking about the Bible and interpretations of the Bible.
Is he the one who brings clarity to misinterpretations, and that sort of thing? Cool.
Yeah, he is approaches it very scholarly. Reads the Bible in the original Greek and Aramaic, and compares different editions, and it's a very good very good approach for somebody who you might be religious, you might not be religious, but I really enjoy Dan McClellan's
Which
content.
Bible are we talking about there? Because
there's a lot of them. And there's a lot of people who might have written the book. And he talks all the time about that, about the different versions and why different meanings mean different things to different people over time, and how we always negotiate with the text. And we can't always assume the meaning that it meant for people back then means the same thing now, because meanings change.
Right.
Right.
That's cool.
Which version do you think the AI data set is most trained on? The King James Bible? Which version of the Bible is AI language models going to be the most skewed towards? Because if you haven't seen yet, Adam just put out a really excellent video covering an argument, a pretty interesting, believable argument that AI music will never quite be good enough to jam with a human. And if you haven't seen that video, go on over to Adam's channel, watch that video, and then come right back, because I'm going to pick apart everything he said in that video and totally own him, Ben Shapiro style.
Own me, Ben, please.
Yeah,
please.
I'm going to cause you the type of humiliation
own
that
me
makes
with
you
facts and logic.
Get ready to unlist that video that you poured hours into, because there's basically no coherent thoughts in it, but it's very compelling to hear someone who sounds so smart. So go check out the video and come right back. But yeah, Adam, clearly there are a lot of things that could potentially hinder AI from progressing to a point where it really does actually convincingly pass the true Turing test, which is based on interaction. Adam shows how the Turing test is more based on interaction between an AI and a person than it is just about the output that the AI spits. What do you think are some of the big hindrances, and do you think that religions will be altered by this? I'm kind of curious.
Ooh, well, I would say that there is kind of a quasi-cult religion that's built up around AI in the first place, because people in that sphere are very much talking about the singularity as almost, there's this messianic quality to it, I feel like, where we're always going towards the singularity, and then we're going to reach the promised land. The AI is developing, and this will be our savior, basically. That's the vibe that I get from a lot of people, especially when you listen to AI people at companies like OpenAI talk about what it is that they're valuing and what it is that they're building. And for me, we're musicians. We like to make music, and it feels very strange to then hear generative AI music do a pretty good job of creating recordings that sound almost like humans made it. And I'm making the argument in my video that they will get to that point, and it might have already happened, where you don't need humans to make passable recordings, and even recordings that might have a lot of connection to people. And you see this with people making meme songs all the time with Gen AI now. You don't need humans to do that. You don't need humans to do a lot of things.
Right.
But my argument in the video is that that's just a small portion of music. Like, the musical things that we do, like sitting down with your guitar and writing a song, that's hard to emulate, or writing a song with another person. That's hard to emulate for AI because the steps in cognition and the steps in interpersonal relationships that go into music making, the act of making music, are very complicated. And I was basically making the argument that in order to really replace us, in order to truly replace human beings, you have to replace every aspect of music making. You can replace human beings in the marketplace, but you can't replace human beings for each other. The bigger argument that I honestly think that works the best for this is that machines have been beating humans at chess for 20 years now. Machines are way better at chess than we are. Like, they are the best at chess, and they're going to get probably as good, if not better, at us at recorded music very soon. And it's scary to think about that. But people still play chess, and in fact, chess is like equally as exciting as it has ever been. You got Magnus Carlsen.
It's incredibly popular now.
You got superstars, right? You got chess superstars, even though the machines are already better at us at chess. Why is that? Because it's more interesting and more exciting to see people play chess, and chess becomes more of a spectator sport. And my thought is that musicians should lean into it. Musicians should make music a spectator sport, which it is. Live music is a spectator sport, or a participatory sport, which you can go and you can play music with other people. And that's the value, less so the end product of the recording. Because that end product of the recording, machines can and will get to the point where humans are irrelevant. But in that participatory process, I don't think that's ever going to be the case. So that's basically my argument, and why I don't feel like a Turing test where there's a conversation between human beings and a computer that will ever really happen, because there's no need, and people don't really want that. We don't want to see AI chess players play each other. We want to see Magnus Carlsen play. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I'm coming at.
That kind of reminds me of when we did the 24-hour albums, because the process of making it was integral to, I think, people's fullest enjoyment of the recordings themselves. Like, a lot of people enjoy those albums just for what they are, but I think they're probably enjoyed the most by people who are actually there. It makes me wonder, like, what other ways participatory music can exist, like, as a product besides going to concerts, because going to concerts has major limitations. Like, it's expensive and hard to play enough shows to make a living.
Of course.
Yeah. I wonder from your video, Adam, how you had like the Pomplamoose like sessions and how they like kind of edited them to be like these like funny moments of like rehearsing and learning the songs that they're writing. And I wonder, based on also like my own experience lately of playing really lovely, incredible like apartment concerts in the last month, like I wonder if instead of only concerts, I wonder if there'll be more like integration of audience in the like writing process and like having an audience for that as well, because that's super interesting. And like, just having a stream is cool, but like I think it'd be even better to be there. Just like watching like a concert video is this cool, and actually going to that concert is much cooler.
Right.
That's awesome.
That stuff is happening on Twitch quite a bit, where artists are sharing that process and letting their chat participate in making lyrics and whatnot, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The idea that... Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and like there's this dividing line between audience and performer, that there are very powerful ways of blurring that, if not getting rid of it. Community choirs, playing music with your friends. There's no audience and performer in that regard. That's just everybody is both audience and performer. And in the ideal world, everybody is making music for themselves and for other people all the time, where there isn't a dividing line necessarily. One of the things that's kind of scary to see, the person who, I forget his name, the person who's running Suno.ai, one of the big generative AI companies, is watching him talk about the artist class and then the rest of us. And that's a big
Ooh.
part. It's a big part of how he talks about why there is value in generative AI. He's like, well, the artist, we're so reliant on the artist class to give us music, but now the rest of us can make music by using generative AI. And there's something egalitarian about that, but there's also something very strange about that. And
It's a false premise.
Exactly. I feel like there's a hint of, I want to call it revenge of the nerds, or anger at artists for creating things because of deep desire. Sometimes people have a deep desire to make and to create, but then they don't know how. And that's a very real issue, I guess, because there's no music education. People don't grow up making music with themselves, with their families, with, instruments. And then there's this almost jealousy, I don't want to say necessarily, but there's this desire to feel that like connection to the divine and each other through music. And, these generative AI companies are trying to fill the cheapest, easiest bridge to that. Like, I typed this in and I made this music. Yeah. So I don't know. Did you? Maybe.
Yeah. I think like that. Well, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say everyone who's used like Midjourney, I think kind of knows that like not really making the thing feeling of asking for a prompt, and even if you spend a really long time like getting more and more specific with your instructions and like researching the best way how to like tell the AI to give you back an image that you're looking for, I think everybody after experiencing that a couple times knows like they didn't make it.
On a legal level, I think I don't know if this is like legally in stone yet, but I've heard at least people who are very knowledgeable about generative AI saying that like if you type in a prompt and generate an image, you don't technically own it copyright wise, which I think is makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know for sure that like everybody actually comes to that conclusion from generating, because I think as someone who's made albums and made art, and done the process that Adam like refers to in his video of, so it's so important to use your body and go through this. If you haven't done that very much, it's hard to know what you're missing. Yeah. I would say. And it is like really fun to like poke around in Midjourney till you come up with something that Midjourney doesn't normally give you. Mm-hmm. And I think there is artistic potential to that, like especially how you frame it. For instance, if you type in average woman, and when you do that in Midjourney, you get the same like women who are like this, who are super blushing. They're usually white and they're always like super skinny and they're always like, That's what you get if you type in average woman. And so if you typed average woman and then you type something else to get what actually looks like an average woman and put them next to each other and then put their prompts next to each other, now it's art, right? It's like saying something. It's a frame where you're making a point about, our data and our biases and the reflection that the AI is showing us.
How would you do that with Suno or Udio, where there is generative AI and from text from prompt? Like, what would an example of art be like with that idea? Like,
does Udio do a similar thing as Suno, or?
Yeah, they're both essentially the same thing. They're text to prompt. You type in what you want, and you can get very granular, and it does a pretty good job of giving you what that is. Okay. Especially with like more popular song. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that they just trained these models on the entire catalog of Spotify,
right.
Which is highly unethical, but they're being very cagey about where they got their data. It's almost certainly that was the case. But like you could say, I don't know, we could maybe think about how do you create art about that? How do you create art about like best pop song, typing that in, and then I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
best pop song in a minor key, great, that kind of thing.
The first thing that comes to mind isn't exactly like the Midjourney example, but what I would do to make art with Suno right now, if I was interested in this concept, which I'm not, unfortunately, but I would generate like the best pop song, and then I would separate the vocals from the instrument and re-record the vocals myself, but full of humility and imperfection, and like do a very raw vocal take that isn't quite right, and maybe like have it gradually, like maybe the whole thing is like detuning by a couple cents per every 10 seconds or something, you know, do something to show like the decay.
Make some art.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like you have to have that level of like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to say this? And then the execution to do it. So there's like layers of like what is art, but there's a mindset behind it. I feel like where it's like, what am I trying to do? How am I trying to do it? And it feels very strange to have that so homogenized into just typing into a prompt and then expecting that level of response. And, you know, I've had that experience many times with Midjourney where it's like, I the only reason why I ever use Midjourney is to make some stupid meme and make my friends laugh. It's great for that. It's fantastic for that. But I could not imagine thinking what I was doing was important or that I was speaking to something deeper in myself or like my relationship to the world with Midjourney unless I was thinking like about Midjourney's output itself. And then that becomes a little bit more interesting. But like Ben said, I have no interest in doing that at all with Suno because I can just make music and Suno represents something very like dark to me. So I don't know. There's some interesting subjects about like what is art, what are musicians, what are we doing? And the video was mainly just trying to like investigate like, you know, doing music is much more about the process for me, and I think for most people, than just the output. However, the audiences, usually because they don't have a daily relationship with music, just see music as the output, as the recording. And it's things like Twitch, it's things like live music, it's things like playing with your friends that then bring that conversation a lot closer to what I feel like is the true aspect of music, which is participatory. People understand that with sports. This is another great analogy, I think. You understand that you can play sports with other people. And it's a big part of growing up is playing sports with other people and like learning how to play soccer and football and basketball. And that's something that everybody does in school. And then at the professional level, you watch games and you understand that you're the spectator and that they are the performers, so to speak. But you could do sports like that. It's like, that's the whole thing is like, you know, the game, you've done the game yourself. You can put yourself in the position of the athletes. You understand that they're doing this at a very high level, but you understand that it's not this like this you have the ability to do what they're doing. That's not really the case with music. Music, especially in the current society, we live in this society, there is very much a dividing line, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think that I had something pretty good.
What did you have, Ben? But yeah.
Oh yeah, so when you're thinking of like how much do people value the process of musicking and making music versus the product, because like you mentioned, you know, people are very used to judging the quality of music based on the output alone. An example of people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars per household on the process is music school. If you thought of Berklee as a musical artist whose job is to get people to further appreciate and invest in the process of making music and create an economy around that, music school, like Berklee, private music schools especially, are proof that people are willing to spend exorbitant amounts of money and take enormous risk to engage with that. So maybe that's good. Maybe that's hopeful.
But do you think the goal of these companies is to make art, or is it to make products? Because what I'm seeing, like with the example you had of that company, is it ends up being a jingle.
Oh, yeah. I don't see any artistic intent in any of this. There are many fantastic AI artists that are doing a lot of great work. I've worked with DataBots, which is this artist. They're a Gen AI collective. They do awesome. This, except there's always some broader point, and they also make a point to ethically source all of their data, which I think is a very important thing. Yeah. and the work that they do is meant much more with, can we build it? What can we do with this thing, rather than can we sell the thing?
Right.
And I think that's a pretty. It's a tale as old as time. Commercial music versus artistic music, and what exactly is the line, and all of that. But
Sure, yeah.
I feel like this is the ultimate evolution of that, the commodification of music, because now there doesn't need to be any human input to create sellable background music. And the way that most people interact with music on a daily basis is as furniture music, things to happen in the things that happen in the background. That my partner, like when she is working, she will always have on a lo-fi hip hop channel. And I'm like, this is nothing. This is window dressing. But that is her relationship to that music, because that's what it works for her. It's functional. And that is that, now we have that ability to just turn on a faucet and then just have that kind of background wherever.
Yeah.
So that is, some of my thoughts. I have a million other thoughts about AI music, but I made a video. I basically am in love with the idea that music as a process and music as a community building thing, because that feels like there's more of a more meaning to mere sound. It's sound's power to connect us and make us feel bigger and better things. And there's something just profoundly. There's something like just in how this whole thing has shaped out that I don't feel like it. I don't sense the art.
Is there an AI technology or thing you've seen that you are excited about that you really want?
Oh, that I really want? I mean, I love stem separation. That is really exciting. Stem separation is one of the coolest things that AI has brought. I think that is that's incredible. Timbre transfer is interesting. I think there's a lot of value to it, but ethically it gets very dicey. The same way that sampling was dicey in the early days of hip hop. Timbre transfer is a similar thing. Thanks I Ruined It is a meme, TikTok channel. And they do a lot of these things, like, what if it, Hank Williams Sr. sang like Taylor Swift or something like that. That's the whole thing of like taking an older artist. What if they were singing a Taylor Swift song? And the way that they do it is the person behind the meme account sings the Taylor Swift song and then applies the Hank Williams timbre transfer to their own voice, so that their own voice captures all of the nuances of the song. So they're doing the singing, and it's actually a pretty intensive process to do this kind of thing to get the right artistic result. And then they put on the final layer of
interesting
of the artist that they've done the timbre transfer with. Yeah. And to me, that's again, I'm not sure if I would do that for my own art, but at least there is some like goal there that they're working towards, that they're like really, there's some craft involved. And the possibilities of timbre transfer are always very interesting. Like, what if I played my bass, but then it turned into the sound of me singing? I don't know what that would be like, but that kind of thing of like taking one sound and turning it into another. It's like the ultimate evolution of synthesis. Using AI to like go deep on that idea. Super, super cool. I love that. Generative AI could be interesting also if it's trained on ethical sources. So I think the tech is awesome. I think with any technology, it's just the ethics behind it.
Yeah, I feel like a really, really interesting use would be like if you had a lot of music, like if you had a big like body of work and you like train it based on your work and you're like, what does it think I'll make? Like that's a cool example.
Well, one of the early data bots, this is maybe 3 or 4 years ago, one of our early attempts was they trained their data on all of Sungazer's music. The problem is that that's not that much. Like in order to really do like the things that you need to do, you need to have a huge variety of music. So it was just, it didn't lead to anything particularly interesting. It was just like kind of a weird sputtering versions of our songs. But
How long? But how long did you play? You played bass for like 2 hours to train the infinite bass solo.
Yeah. So the next project we did was an infinite bass solo, and I played to a click, pretty much just subdivision eighth notes to a click for like eighth notes and 16th notes for 2 hours in G major. And then it's strange if you go and listen to the infinite bass solo. It's like it doesn't sound like what it was that I was playing. But, I tried to give as much data for them to work with. I think ideally I should have been playing for even longer than that, but, there we go.
So if you did 2 hours of Sungazer music into it, it would produce a stranger result than just bass because it's just bass. Whereas like Sungazer, it would have to do a good job of understanding relationships between different instruments.
Yeah, and as far as I know, and this is something I've just been trying to learn how it works, because that is the key. How do you encode music, and how does a machine learning algorithm understand what it's listening to, and like do text to prompt or text to audio kind of things? And as far as I know, for the text to audio prompts, a lot of it just comes down to manual tagging of songs, meaning like somebody sat there and said, this is a jazz song, this is sad, this is bebop, this is whatever. And so it comes up with a list of, like 50 adjectives, and that's attached to the music that it's hearing. And then the AI associates that sound with those tags. And so the way that it was described to me is that the big way that AI works with music specifically is a technique called diffusion, where it starts with white noise, basically just like all the spectrums, or like all the audio spectrum, and then using machine learning attempts to denoise it using these categories, meaning like if it hears blues, then when you denoise a blues song to a certain level, it starts resembling this kind of waveform. When you denoise a rock song to this level, it starts resembling this kind of waveform. And so that's a technique called diffusion. And then if you could get really good at identifying the word to the style of waveform, then you can eventually get to the point where you get like passable audio. Now, that has nothing to do with music making. Like, you're not thinking chords, you're not thinking chord progressions, you're not thinking beats, or you're thinking just the literally raw audio, white noise, and then chopping down the white noise into a waveform, like a sculptor. But once you get into the symbolic representation of what's going on, there is no symbolic representation. And this is a big thing in generative AI circles, is like, well, you get good at understanding raw data, but like there's no way of interfacing with it beyond the raw data, because there is no symbolic representation of what's going on. No, the machine doesn't know what an eighth note is. The people making these programs don't know what an eighth note is. That's the scary thing. There are no musicians at any of these companies. And that's like the frustrating thing with this whole thing too, is like there is such a feeling very removed from the whole process. It's just, here's the white noise, let's start chopping out all the stuff that isn't quote unquote blues. It's a weird way of thinking about it, but that's what's happening.
I wonder if you would get a more meaningful result if you had this like software that reads every single action you take while you're working in a DAW, and is always recording all of the actions you take in the DAW, and then is also tracking the audio output, so you hear all the iterations of music from zero to complete, plus all the keystrokes. And then what you do is you actually teach the AI to use the DAW in conjunction with something generating audio, and so it's like going through the motions more.
Yeah.
I wonder if you got to the point where it would be like writing a email in Gmail, where it's like suggesting chord progressions,
right.
transitions.
That's a cool. That would be fun.
That would be fun.
Because a lot of I don't know, when you click those like auto response things, you make a choice.
Yeah.
Like I say
Yeah,
no to
right.
that a lot of the time.
Yeah, but sometimes it's like, yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Are you sure you want to go to the flat 6 here? Oh yeah, I did know that. Okay, yeah.
This
Yeah.
isn't in the key. Wow.
Wow.
Starts like turning red whenever you
Oh, yeah.
like out of the key.
Charles Ives, warning, Charles Ives. You're not rich enough to make this kind of music.
There's like the little like grammar, like the, you know, when you misspell a word, whatever that little
Yeah.
red line is. Yeah.
And the red squiggles.
Yes.
The red squiggles, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's so many ways that you could imagine it. It's just like less efficient, right? So if the point is to get to the most efficient way of creating recorded music is probably the diffusion method, right? Where you don't need to know any of this stuff. The least creative, but like
Right.
the most efficient, right? So,
I don't know exactly the difference, but from what I've heard, the Suno and the other one, Udio, they are not using diffusion. They are using what ChatGPT is using, the large language model, but the one that OpenAI is making their music generator is diffusion. And when you listen to that one right now, it sounds like it's years behind Suno and Udio, but I think that's because they're doing pure generation, whereas I feel like there's like I think even less ethical approach to Suno and Udio of like, they're not generating, I feel like they're like chopping and pasting or something. I like that. Warning, audience, listeners, I don't know this. So I'm just like wondering out loud.
This should be on every podcast, please.
Yeah. Well, right. Because what happens is the podcast goes long enough that you stop talking about what you know about and you start conjecturing, but you have to like make sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's
so
clear.
Conjecture warning. If you diffuse something that could be unethical because the data set could be stolen music, but at least it's generating some new thing. But it's worse if you're like literally chopping and copying and pasting and then like inserting literal chunks of music. But I don't think that's what's happening either. But anyway, all I wanted to say is it's interesting to listen to the diffusion one because it sounds so much worse right now. But it does seem like the failure cases would be way more interesting and way more exploitable than something that's just guessing really accurately like what a human is likely to do next.
And what do you
Right.
mean by exploitable?
Well, when I'm thinking about what I want to do with AI is I like to go back to the old image generation where if you type in a cow, it gives you the idea of a cow. It gives you something that your brain knows is cow related, but it looks like you took a cow and made it into a jigsaw puzzle and spread it all around with like some aesthetic. And I
Right.
think that's the kind of thing. I want noise
the
generators.
vibe of cow.
Yeah, vibe of cow. It would be interesting to have vibe of, let's say, like vibe of a Dilla beat, but expressed through, I don't know, some unimaginable instrument, and then, you know, play around with it, have a good time. There's some sound to mess with. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is something about how the taste of the people who are programming these things directly influences what is possible with them, and how the taste of a few programmers then becomes essentially what everybody has to listen to now, right? Like, how weird, like the use case, the wrong things, like wrong options are normally discarded. In fact, like that's a big thing of like how for models, when you train them, you have to have humans often say if the result was good or not. And the taste of those humans is often going to guide then the direction of that model. The question I always have is like, who are the people making that decision? That's a pretty important decision for what ends up becoming the shape of music to come. And then you have to start thinking a little bit more sociologically, like, are they coming primarily from the Western world? Are they coming primarily from developed countries? What is their background in music? Do they have a background in music? You know, that kind of thing. Because
Do they go to Burning Man?
Do they go to Burning Man?
A super relevant question.
Yes or no? That's the only metric. Do you go to Burning Man? Yes or no? But you know that then influences on a pretty deep level, like what everything that comes after that. And you know, we've seen this with Midjourney and like image generation. There's a pretty depressing sameness to everything. It just is pretty like the same. and it usually caters to the aesthetic of people who think that they like a certain look, I guess. I don't know. The people who end up making the most generative art are generally gravitate towards a particular aesthetic that is, to me, quite upsetting. But
Yeah, it kind of vaguely reminds me of like how ads sound now, where like somehow the volume is like really boosted and the person sounds like hello and like it just is like really intense and like they're smiling like manically, kind of like coming through. It's like I feel like that is kind of the vibe of like the AI generated art is like exactly that, like this is too much and too like of the thing that it is.
It's the YouTube thumbnail of the YouTube thumbnailification of I guess other forms of advertisement, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. The YouTube thumbnail of music would definitely be a Suno song. Like,
oh yeah.
Just like because one thing you just mentioned the whose tastes are these based on. Like one way you could get a pretty diverse range of tastes, at least in 2024, is by mining Spotify's data to create bots that are the ones who vote on if they like the music or not. So you could have like one person who says whether the music sounds like music or not, but then use bots to decide like which audience this is relevant to. Because like they're probably, if you took like the profiles of all the people who listen to Radiohead, who also really got into Black Messiah by D'Angelo in 2015, and you found the people with that in common, and then you surveyed everything else they had in common, and you came up with this profile of like, these are the people who are really into this ambient stuff and this like groovy stuff, and they probably like Hiatus Coyote, you could guess now. And then they're the ones who are like checking how successful the generated song is, and then that information is used to like put together the a future bot that or whatever, that I don't know if you have to have another step. Then at that point maybe you have a more diverse set of tastes involved than just the actual humans, but like I think that would most likely be a way that like a pop like record label might actually commission songs, as they like figure out what all the profiles on Spotify like and generate that and then rebuild that song with the artists they're trying to break.
They could, yeah.
It sounds very plausible.
I said a lot of words.
Yeah, no. Well, so the relying on bots for anything and everything is going to become, I mean, this is something that is,
The Dark
have you guys heard?
Forest.
Yeah, Dark Forest, yeah. Oh man, have you guys been on Facebook recently?
Hugo was talking about this.
Yeah.
With the pictures, you mean?
Yeah.
And the AI, yeah.
It's so strange. Yeah, this Dark Forest theory is pretty.
What's the Dark Forest theory? That went over my head.
Well, it's the idea that the internet is slowly or will become or already has been taken over by bots.
Oh,
and there's
right.
no real. At a certain point, there will just not be humans interacting on the internet anymore. Just purely bots, and the real
and they're
humans
not
will,
nice. Is another aspect to that, because it's from like this explanation for why we haven't met aliens yet. What's that called? The paradox, Fermi paradox. Yeah. So the Fermi guy, he said that there are aliens everywhere, but the reason we don't hear from them is because anyone who does send out a signal gets destroyed. And so like the Dark Forest theory of the internet, posed I think by Maggie Appleton, was like what Adam is saying, like everyone's bots, and also they're not very nice. So if a human posts online, you get discouraged from being there, which is why like humans aren't proliferating online anymore, and the bots are the only ones who stay around.
Okay, right.
And,
And it's kind of true. I mean, I look at Adam, for instance. Your posts get enough attention that, and you're also inflammatory sometimes, but like your posts get enough attention that people say things about you and get mad at you in such a way that a lot of people I don't think can handle. I couldn't handle personally, and I would just disappear.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of layers to it, but when you optimize for everything, it makes the most sense to just have bots do the interaction and bots do everything. And it's in Facebook and Meta's and Google's interest to not let advertisers, the people who are investing money in the internet, it's not in their interest to know that there are bots doing all of this engagement. So then the bots become, and then it becomes more and more commonplace until that's literally all there is. With AI generated music and AI generated video, if and when that comes in any real meaningful way, you just have AI YouTube videos, and then you have all the bots interacting on AI, and then or on YouTube, and all that stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, and then the humans are like, well, this all sucks, so let's just go into a Discord server and hang out here, but where there are no advertisers, you know what I mean? And so that is, it's a pretty compelling theory, I think, because it reflects a lot of people's experience now on the contemporary internet. This is not where it was 10 years ago. It sucks here. So, and it's getting shittier. It's not getting better. So,
right. I really feel like so much of that shittier feeling is like that. Like, I'll just use like my Spotify experience as like an example. So like, it feels like whenever Spotify is like, here's generally what you like, they are wrong, because the thing that I like in general, like if you were to just break it down to its like this basic components, it's like really good lyrics, and it's not really about the arrangement, which is like what they think that most people like is like, oh, you like this genre of music, you like this genre of music,
right?
And it's like, no, not at all, really. And I feel like then they've made all these decisions based on that one conclusion that they know what I like, and like it feels like that everywhere on the internet, like that Instagram thinks I like these certain things, but it's like not exactly, like not
tolerate them.
Really, and it's like it makes me like addicted, and I'll like click on it, but it doesn't mean I like it or I'm inspired,
or that you'll
by
continue to click on it,
right? And I feel like the big thing it's like actually missing is input from us. And I also don't know if people would want to give their input to make it a better experience, but the truth is like I would love to just like talk to someone and be like, I actually really like these things, and I would really like to not see these things anymore at all. And it feels like, everywhere I go on the internet, it's just not, it doesn't really get me. And every once in a while it does, or like a friend does, and I get like a great suggestion from someone else, and then I'm like off to like a new branch of music or something. But I think the whole like basis of their like profiles on us is wrong, at least to some degree. And then we just continue at lightning speed to go down the path, assuming they know us, and like deeper and deeper into like AI and bots, like building on that same profile, when it's like, it wasn't wrong. I mean, it's been wrong for like 10 years. So why would it start being right?
They call it the inshitification of the internet, and everything is being inshitified.
That's funny.
Because it's just, it got one thing kind of right, but also kind of wrong 10 years ago. Yeah. And everything since then, billions of dollars has been built on that. Yeah. And so then people were like, when you spend a decade wading through this garbage, you're like, I don't want to. It's like there's no desire. And then you get then it's just like, oh yeah, actually my buddy knows some stuff, and they'll recommend that stuff to me instead.
Yeah.
And so people are being trained right now to be numb and ignore the recommendations because they know it's just like Spotify doesn't know me at all. Like,
Yeah.
because the stuff that I listen to on Spotify is either for work, for
Right.
like listening to things, or various podcasts, or very, very fragmented on Spotify because I listen to music everywhere. Like on YouTube, I listen to music. I listen on Apple Music for other things. I play music myself. And so Spotify has a really bad judge of what it is that I like on any given day. So I can't rely on Spotify because there's too many other things that I do. And that's another thing, is like every company has their own profile, and you might go to different places for different things. So it's like,
Yeah.
But it's a pretty compelling theory, this dark forest theory. There's a book by Neil Stephenson called Anathem. Have you guys ever checked out Neil Stephenson?
No.
He's super, super nerdy guy. I'm somewhat embarrassed to read his books because they are very, very nerdy, and he can't write characters for shit. But he builds some very, very interesting worlds that feel very dynamic and very alive. And this book, Anathem, takes place 3,000 years in the future in a parallel reality. But a big part of, like, one part of the world building is that there is the internet still, but nobody goes on there because it's just completely overrun by bots. And then there have to be special people to go on the internet to try and like wade through data to try and find like, all of data, all of our history, everything was like stored on the internet, but nobody can find anything anymore because it's just so overrun. So they have specialists who deal with like trying to figure out what is right and what is wrong and what is just like algorithmically generated because nobody knows anymore. And so it's like, yeah, I read that like Anathem maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. I was like, And now with the rise of, generative AI, I'm like, yeah, this is definitely where we're headed. This is definitely where we're headed. Wow.
That's
That's really interesting.
What a good call.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, it's been a thing in speculative fiction and sci-fi for a while now. And now we can really see how that could happen. The hallucinations from ChatGPT and all that. Anyway, I'm in general kind of sick of thinking about this stuff. But it is very much our reality, daily reality. So anyway.
I think that if I were you, I'd be extra, extra, extra sick of it because you were doing and have been doing and still are doing YouTube a lot, where you are embedded in a relationship with the like accelerating curve towards blandness, where like everything gets formalized on YouTube, and like the things that work get really a lot more set in stone and all that. But you also have a foot in the real world because you're in a band that tours. And I feel like if all you know is YouTube, it's easier to be like, all right, let's do it right. Let's just do it right. Let's do it the way YouTube wants us to do it. And that's like what being a YouTuber is. And it's cool and it works. But if you are also in a band that tours, then it burns because there's such a contrast. And the things that YouTube offers somebody who's in a band are actually extremely helpful. Like some way of making income when you're on the road that's passive, things like that. And like in your case, bringing tons of attention to your band. Actually, in our case as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that I can understand why you'd be really sick of thinking about it because it's very personal to you. It's not just an abstract thing. It's actually been affecting you gradually more and more, and me and all of us, because we've all been in these algorithms for a very long time, but particularly because you've also got this strong foot in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, you have to play the game. When you're in the real world, you don't have to play it as much, but then you come to really rely on playing the game. And there's, of course, like a back and forth between the two. Like I make YouTube videos, and if I could just do that, like you said, I could just say like, I'm just going to play the YouTube game. And I did that during the pandemic, and it was great because I couldn't do anything else. But it was bad also because I couldn't do anything else. I'm a bass player. I'm a musician. I play in the band Sungazer, and we tour the world, and that's exciting. And I really genuinely love doing that. That honestly is the thing that like I'm most passionate about. But for anybody in that world, playing the social media game is very important. And I have like some experience in that and on the other side. So it's this back and forth. It's a constant balance. And, it's interesting because, there's, did you guys read this Guardian article about how difficult it was for bands to tour? They're basically, I don't know if you know this, guys, but touring is expensive.
Oh, shit.
I don't know if you know this, guys, but touring is hard.
What?
Do you guys know this?
Tell me
Are
more.
you aware?
Do
Are you
tell.
aware of this? Okay.
I am only becoming aware of this now.
So let me tell you, it's actually, there's a lot of money and it takes a long time. So the Guardian posted this article. They interviewed a bunch of bands and looked at budget sheets from a bunch of bands, and basically was doing this big expose on how it was almost impossible for any band of any kind of mid-size to make any money while on tour. And this is an ongoing discussion, but yeah, I mean, like I'm deeply aware of this, spending a lot of my time right now planning for future tours and looking at budget sheets and being like, the numbers don't add up. The numbers just don't add up. How can we make them add up? They just don't add up. And then realizing that, I need to rely on YouTube maybe a little bit for my day job income. It's so strange to think of YouTube as my day job funding my passion project, which is a band. But that is,
Congrats
I am living the dream in that regard. And I'm very, very grateful for that. But it is like, it is a weird thing to think about. Like, it is significantly more profitable to sit on my ass and talk to a camera than tour the world and play music for people and share in like a really, what I consider a much more meaningful moment rather than creating content for the internet. And yet there are people who have deeply connected with a lot of my YouTube videos and learned a lot and feel emotionally connected to my YouTube videos in ways that I am not emotionally connected back. And it's hard for me to think about YouTube as affecting people as much as my touring does, because the touring affects me in a positive way and makes me feel like I'm doing real work in a way that YouTube doesn't. Because YouTube to me is all algorithm, all numbers, all, I'm making videos and I care about the videos, but like the emotional payoff is never there. There is no emotional payoff. It's hitting upload. And then you're being like, I'm done. Okay.
Yeah.
Next video.
I'm so like, in this moment of things changing so fast, like, do you think there's a way you could possibly do your YouTube stuff in like a live, like clinic format where you could get those feelings and see people like reacting in real time and talk to you and have those emotional connections?
Oh, 100%. That's to me, that's just teaching. That's running a masterclass. That's going to universities, and I do that, and that is very exciting. I do enjoy that a lot, but that isn't necessarily like I wouldn't want to build a career doing that. That's just becoming a professor at a university, and that's fine and that's great. I don't think that's necessarily what I want to do right now yet, though. But that essentially is the other side of things, is like teaching, doing it the old school way is the way you get one-to-one interaction, like real human contact is the way you do things. I was on a podcast with Mike Rugnita, who was one of the OGs of the early YouTube. He started a new podcast, and he inspired me pretty directly to make YouTube videos. And we were talking I forget if it was on mic or off mic, but it was a lot about how even though we're deeply connected on the internet, like we're not really connected on the internet because everything is parasocial. There is no back and forth between people, unless it's like in a Zoom or maybe a little bit on Discord, a little bit, but there's no back and forth. There's no real-time interaction anywhere. The real-time interaction, having a conversation with people, is how real information is exchanged. There's the idea of the influencer accent or YouTube speak. or the idea of, like how
Hey,
people
guys.
talk. Hey guys, hey guys. And on this episode, he interviewed a linguist, and they were talking about this stuff, and how strange it was that people in real life were not adopting influencer accent. They were not adopting YouTube accent, even though they were consuming so much media with it. And the reason is because there was no back and forth. It's just an influencer talking to them, but they weren't responding in kind and matching the same kind of vocal cues and inflection. It was just input. It's the same thing with basically anything that we do, is we consume stuff, but we don't reflect and put it back in the moment. It's, if you were to, I suppose, if you were like looking at your phone and saying and speaking back and like pretending to have a conversation with everybody that came and talked to you, maybe that might influence how you speak. But for the most part, there are patterns of speech that are adopted because that is the way of communicating that you are an influencer, but they are not adopted back. And, for me, it's that back and forth between a student and me as a teacher, or me as a student and a teacher themselves, that make it feel like there's a real information exchange that has occurred. Because if I feel like a student has learned something, that influences how I teach. If I feel like a student has reacts to something, it influences me way more than me hitting upload on a YouTube video, where I get no feedback. The feedback I get is in YouTube comments, and most of it is really, really inane.
You cannot tell if those are bots or not. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yep.
And honestly, I will say that there are some comments that I get that are really, really well thought out and really interesting, making some very, very interesting commentary on my YouTube video, and I learn a lot from those, but they are far and far between. They are not the majority. Most of it is the most inane bullshit you'll ever hear. And for me, that is worse than useless. It's stuff that it's noise that I need to shut out. So there is no information exchange between me talking to an audience, but there is a lot between me and talking and teaching to a single person. Unfortunately, YouTube is just a much more efficient way of making money and supporting my electric bass habit with Sungazer. So YouTube is the way that I do my teaching. But yeah, that's kind of the way that I'm thinking about it. Anyway.
I think teaching is a sacred act, and it's like foundational to music, in the sense that you're arguing in your video, like you're saying the output of music, just the output alone, that's not really music. It's the sum of the activity of making it, playing with people, and then outputting it. And I think an integral step is teaching, passing down the knowledge, because before you had recorded music, what would you have? You would have people who are performing and teaching music. That's what musicians would be doing, is they would be playing in their house, and then their kids learning the songs they sing around the table. Most religions have music, so they're teaching and learning and performing music, even just in a domestic setting. And then there would be some badass awesome musicians that everyone wanted to go and listen to, and they would then be teaching other badass musicians. So I think that is another thing that will continue to be an avenue for people to have music careers, is through teaching. I don't see how that will be replaced altogether. It might change forms a lot, but
I'm also still kind of stuck on the idea of making YouTube more meaningful for Adam, and also for all of us. I'm okay, I recently took 2 classes with School of Song, which is a really cool organization for songwriting. And one thing that they do is they have a giant Zoom meeting, and they have people who work for School of Song who will actually hand pick people with questions. They'll write their questions, and then they will pin those people to the main screen to then ask 10 people get to ask a question to the person teaching the class, because there's so many people in the class. And I'm imagining some kind of YouTube premiere kind of situation with either like random or like pre-screened questions, so you can actually like on a Zoom call like hear back, you know, what people want to talk about after just seeing your video for the first time, or you know, like having it be kind of like a DVD behind the scenes where you actually like talk over your own video or pause it and go like, actually this part was really crazy because there's a lot more to the story, you know. And having this like much more meaningful experience than just the upload and then the comments, you know.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that just streaming on? Isn't that just streaming? I feel like.
Well, except for the like actually seeing the person asking the question.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a chat. It's a.
Right.
It's like a room.
And seeing their face watch the video, you know.
I
So that would
see,
be a
yeah,
cool
yeah.
thing to integrate into streaming, because like
Yeah.
because you could go into
Right.
your private Discord and pick 10 people for this week's stream and
make it a Patreon thing or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like that idea of improving any given medium, like any given place where people are posting content, which I really think has a lot of potential and often is art. And I would say like art goes further in this world, I think, for people than content does, but content's actually very important too. There's just maybe like too much of it, but like I know that all of us have made art on the internet. Like we've made content and we've made art. And also the distinction is very subjective. So some
What
things
is
I
the
would
distinction? Yeah.
say yeah, like some things I would say are art or not are content. Like, you know, I would call a lot of content art. Like I would call a lot of stuff that people wouldn't consider art. I'm pretty liberal with that. But like either way, it's still, I mean, important for us to make stuff that's true to our actual interests and not just for optimizing blah blah blah. And I do think we all do that. I think we're actually all great at that. And then it's like, okay, so we're actually influencing these platforms positively by doing that. Like your Celine Dion video is hugely successful and also like very emotional. Like especially towards the end, you hit like a really emotional note, and it's nice to see like Celine Dion appreciated in that way. You know, like there's a lot of depth to it. So, you know, that's just one example. And so, yeah, I don't think we should totally give up on the idea that there will be like a pendulum swing against like things being super predictable in favor of more individualism and unpredictability.
Yeah, I mean, like what is art versus what is content? I mean, I think of art as anything that is not made specifically. I know that this is not actually the distinction, but for myself, it's anything that I make specifically that I do not care about the audience in any really meaningful way. I care about the thing that I wanted to make at that moment. And on YouTube, it's weird because everything I do on YouTube is for an audience. Like everything I do on YouTube, even if it's something that's very deep and very meaningful for me, it's like I'm performing for an audience. And then that to me is content because it is stuff that then I optimize so that the most people see it. The way that I think about art is it's not optimized. It's not something that I am attempting. It's not optimized for the audience. It's optimized for something else. I know that's not really the distinction between art and content, but that is very much for myself how I think about things. And for me, it's the music. Music is pure. The way I approach music is purely art, quote unquote, meaning I have a specific thing I want to do. I'm going to go do that thing. This is for me. I can create content around it that's for the audience, but the music is not made with that in mind. And from a lot of us, that's usually the case. You know, for a lot of us, we're creating music where it's like, okay, we're going to try and create content around the music, but at the same time, it's going to be, this is sacred. There's a degree of, sacredness around it where we aren't trying to like, okay, what drum fill is going to be best for Spotify? Like, how do we start this tune so that the first 5 seconds, the most number of people are hooked for Spotify? Like that kind of thing, which, a lot of people are thinking along those lines about like, how do we like optimize for Spotify the same way that I'm optimizing for YouTube? And to me, that is not what I would want to do. So they're approaching music as content in that regard, where it's matching the system of Spotify algorithmic recommendation rather than any kind of musical, like what's best musically for themselves. That said, you can say that any kind of art is optimized for the medium. The idea of an album, like you're optimizing for an album, like there's no reason, or like you're optimizing for a 60-minute collection of music, or 40-minute or 50-minute. There's literally no reason why music needs to be packaged that way. It's just traditionally packaged that way. And in that regard, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're optimizing for the medium the same way that some people are optimizing for YouTube or Spotify. So I don't know. These are just I'm talking myself out of my own definition as I'm speaking. So.
Well, yeah, I think that's a very like relatable way to interface with this question of what is art, what isn't, because it's going to be a real challenge to put that into words. You'll know it when you see it. You know what I mean? It's like, what it is, what it isn't, but it's a cool exercise to put it into words. I'm kind of curious what Hugo and Jessica, if you were to try to define art versus content, if that's even a paradigm for you. I'm just curious to hear how we
not
contrast
so much,
them.
I would say, because I feel like kind of what Adam talked about at the start is like definitions change over time. So the concept of art also changes over time. Now that we're dealing with all this content, I feel like, there's overlap there. It's hard to draw a rough boundary between what is and what isn't art, or what is and what isn't content. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like TikTok trends, and like how like the first time you see it can be kind of like clever or exciting, but then like the fourth time you see it, you're just like, okay, yeah, I get it. But also from the person making that perspective, especially if it's like a dance or like requires like editing or like kind of like thought and work to make it happen, like it is like a process of making something, which I think is art. And it's like an artistic limitation, right? Is like a TikTok trend. Like I'm going to fill out this form with my thoughts or with my body or with my like little take on it. And yeah, I think that is very blurry, and I think for each person it would be different. And I also feel like on like a parallel channel, I'm having like a really hard time. I feel like I used to have this very clear distinction between like doing something like kind of like this like pure art way versus doing something like in a more commercially way, like even just saying like and subscribe, like saying those things in your video at some point like kind of was like an ad, like it was like taking you out of the video. And now it's just so common, even having an ad is so common. And like people can be so good and so like friendly and like have it happen when you don't, like so subtly you don't even notice. Like you're just like, oh, I was so charmed by the way that they said like and subscribe that like I think I will. And like it's just this weird like shift for me of like doing things like that are more like kind of in like an evergreen mindset versus like of the moment, of the time, of the wave we're in. And I found that like being kind of like out of that wave and never saying like and subscribe except for very like sarcastically and jokey, like did not go well. Like I don't know what I've lost, but like it feels like I did like miss out on something, and that is like surprising and weird. Yeah,
I mean, one the like and subscribe. I mean, it is still a joke. I've stopped doing it. I don't do it in any of my videos, and I haven't done it for 5 or 6 years. And the reason specifically is to make it so obvious that that's what I want people to do. Like there is a layer of this where it's like, I want to set myself apart by not doing it, but still with very commercial minds, very commercial ideas at play, my brand, getting people curious in my other content, like all these things like that, rather than, I want to make something deep, I honestly think Bill Wirtz is probably the last YouTube creator that will blow up to that level that was so didn't care about the monetary and brand identity of his channel. And I don't think that's going to ever happen again for somebody who has such a strong brand, if that makes any sense. Because he had a very particular and continues to have a very particular artistic vision, can fulfill it. And it just so happened to align perfectly with YouTube. It just so happened to, because he started on Vine and then moved to YouTube. So I don't know.
I have like a hopeful, crazy thought, which is that actually like the pendulum will again swing into that direction because of the nostalgia of people not being homogenized, and also this I forget your word for it, but the yucky internetification.
In-shitification.
In-shitification, yes.
The in-shitification of the internet, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like we're going to be in a cycle more long term of new social media platforms that bring us in with those feelings of this doesn't have ads and you actually can connect with people, and artsy funny stuff that is different from other people's will rise to the top, and then eventually they will have ads and then eventually it'll get shitty. But I feel like that is the
life cycle of a streaming platform.
Yeah, if you take a step back, that has been what's all of the apps were cool, the cool place at some point that didn't do the things that everyone else did.
Yeah.
Well,
I find the renewed focus on live music very interesting. I hadn't really considered that yet as a result of AI, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Hugo, you mentioned, and it's still a secret who we're talking about, but you mentioned that you have a band jamming experience. Has that happened yet, or is that coming up?
No, that's coming up. But yeah.
Cool. And because I know you've gone out and you joined a choir. You've been doing you have that plan to do that. You got the push too, so that you can make a live set. Have you been feeling the itch to go and be in flesh world more?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Because I've also pretty much just done internet stuff for the past 8 years, so it's very much I need to make music with humans again. Kind of thing. Yeah,
we're gonna do that together in the summer. I'm going up to Hugo's house or apartment or somewhere with Hugo, and
secret location.
and we're hoping that Elliot Klein comes as well, and we're going to make some art. We're gonna have a good time, and I'm gonna make your apartment stink. Just to warn. Let's get some candles.
I did like that aspect of Ben, your AI video, where you were talking about the ways that AI, we will be reacting to AI, and live music is the one. It's kind of like the scene in one of those Matrix sequels where to say "screw you" to the machines, everybody gets together and has an orgy. So I think that will be be what everybody does metaphorically with music. Is live music will become more and more hopefully we'll value it more and more.
Yeah.
The issue, of course, is, piggybacking off of this Guardian article and the rising cost of travel and lodging and all the many things that are required to get from one place to another in meat space. It's like, it's expensive as hell. So I don't know, like maybe valuing a lot more the, like community music making and like making making music with people around you. I think there's a profound need for that for sure. And there always has been a need, but in the face of what happens ahead, let's hope that is where people go to find meaning in music.
I might be naive, but I think there's one simple solution for creating those local communities that are strong enough to foster live music artists that actually do well. The one barrier, all ages shows.
Yeah, 100%. I knew what you were going to say.
Parents and kids come and they sit.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is the huge thing. Huge thing. All ages shows, like making sure that people have places to see music and experience music where they legally can enter, especially in the US. Like everything is 21 plus.
That's so interesting to me because that's not a thing here. Like kids can come. That's not a problem.
Whoa! Thank you so much, Hugo, for that. That sounds so optimistic for like, because we've been playing in dingy bars pretty much only, and even like fancy venues that have great sound systems are still attached to bars, and it's just bar. Like I got bar mitzvah, and I thought that was the end of it, but I ended up in bars for the rest of my fucking life, and I just wish, and that it does make sense. What I said does make sense. Only makes sense to Jessica and I, but I think that like you want the kids to collect local bands the way they collect magic cards and their favorite artists, like in playlists and stuff, because the desire to collect, it's pretty fun. We all get into that, and if they're really enjoying local bands enough to like, oh, I kept seeing Sungazer play, and they're always playing with Bent Knee, and so now I'm like really into Bent Knee, and Bent Knee's always playing with, I don't know, something that one of another band our friends are in, and then they're like, oh fuck, dude, Adam's subbing in Bent Knee today. Adam's subbing in Bent Knee. We gotta go to that one. And then like everyone's like taking videos and they're like, get well soon, bass player from Bent Knee. Like that level of, the same way we have our similar artists and our algorithms and shit, but like locally, that would be cool to have that kind of energy of the least jaded people ever.
Yeah, I remember growing up, there was a venue in Tacoma Park, Maryland, which is, I grew up in the suburbs of D.C., and this venue is called the Electric Maid, and it was an all-ages box. It wasn't, calling it a venue is very generous. It was a box that could maybe hold 70 or 80 people in there. But wow, it was so, like, that's where the local bands played, like where all the high school bands played from various places. And it was so fucking fun to be able to go there and like experience that. I saw like Michael Manring when he came through, amazing solo bass player. He played his gig at the Electric Maid. I know how much people were getting paid in the tickets, so I'm hopefully he was getting paid a little bit more than what the bands were. But it was so valuable an experience, and I miss that. We play so many gigs around the world to people over the drinking age, because venues, the whole music industry is subsidized by the sale of alcohol. In places where, there isn't government support or anything. And I think that is a real issue, because I think, so much of our musical lives are started when we are teenagers. And if teenagers don't have a place to go and check out bands, what are they going to do? If we have more all ages venues, wow, like everything opens up in this very, very exciting way. But unfortunately we don't. So.
Yeah, and for my own just sad life reasons, I would love to see more of the separation of music and alcohol. Like, I've never loved that they're connected. I've never loved that it makes such awkward interactions with fans who are just too drunk to be talking to you and whispering, basically yelling in your ear over and over again, kind of like cycling the same thoughts. And it's just like, it's like here we are giving you our best, and we are getting back a very like not the worst, but we are getting back like not you at your best.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. which is terrible when you consider that alcoholism is a disease, and many of our fans suffer from it, and we're incentivizing them to come to a environment that might cause them to relapse, or at least will cause them some amount of triggering experience.
Yeah.
And they will come because they love us that much. Like I feel so guilty that there's like a jab, in the hug,
Yeah, and then also like bands are literally paid in alcohol.
Yeah, percentages of the
level.
bar.
Yes.
Like a percentage of the
bad
bars.
idea to drink on the road.
And literally, like, here are your drink
Your
tickets.
coupons.
Oh,
yeah.
Here is like, we actually can't pay you, but like, you can have
you can drink
3
tonight.
drinks. Yeah. And it's just like, as a person who doesn't drink, I'm just like, I'll give these to someone and then they'll drink more. Like, that's not really. I would like money, please.
One thing that I have started seeing more, and that we've started doing, is putting non-alcoholic beer on the rider, and that's becoming more popular actually, which I appreciate. I still drink, but I also like drinking non-alcoholic beer, and so like making it a little bit less of a the desire to drink to feel nothing. I do see a culture shift a little bit. Maybe it's just in my community because everybody's getting old. So I think that might honestly just be it. It's like people are like, whoa, let's just maybe not as much. It's just we'll nurse the spear. It's fine. Yeah. But like that is such a big part of the industry and the culture is the expectation of inebriation. Because of the money and because of like the desire to see music as an escape, as a means of like getting outside of your head for once. Finally, I've lived my week. I've struggled this week. I just want to relax and have fun. And oh my God, there's all these amazing bands here. I'm just going to let go. And then that's fine for the person who, I mean, I don't want to say it's fine, but that is like what their life might be, if like living for the weekend. But then for the bands, where that is every night is this expectation of, we're going crazy. We're going crazy. And then as a matter of self-preservation, you just got to be like, nope, this is my day job. I am here to do a job, and please do not meet me at that level because I can't meet you at that level. Anyway, there's things to think about that like in there, but
Yeah.
Well, I'd say that's a very grounding kind of, feels like maybe there's something we can do about it. Answer to a lot of the AI questions is like just focusing on local community and making the actual live experience better and more fruitful and more communal, welcoming in the youth. This is very important. And I think a lot of the people who are rebelling against their phones, which inevitably a lot of people will like go to these spaces if they exist. So I don't know. It feels like a good time to wrap things up. But my co-hosts, do you agree?
I think that's a good optimistic note. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this was actually something like. I don't think I can stop any AI developments, honestly.
Right.
I can only like do what I do with them or without them. But I do feel like there's something that could be done for nurturing communal music.
Yeah, I feel like there needs to be some kind of systemic shift underneath, because like we cannot stop AI, the development of AI. Like that's going on.
And I actually feel like our participation in AI while it's in these really young phases is really important. Like, I don't think we should totally go the other direction and just say, live is king. Yeah, I think that we should like actively play a part in how it is shaped, because otherwise it'll be shaped by people who really don't have our interests in mind.
True.
Yeah. I think the shape of the future is happening now. It's always happening now, by the way. The shape of whatever future will come is always happening right now.
Yeah.
But very much for AI, it is happening right now. And there are patterns of thought, their patterns of music making, which are becoming solidified, that I think it's a vital necessity that people who make music and make this a part of their lives on a daily basis are involved on the front lines, so to speak, because otherwise our future is being ceded to people who might not have music they might not have the artistic process at the forefront, basically. And the needs of the community and the needs of people who rely on music and for a living, they might not have their interest at heart either. So, yeah.
Stay vigilant, folks. Let's shape the future.
Adam, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
having me. I feel a lot cleaner, unfortunately. I need to get dirty. I need to feel dirty again.
Dang it.
God. I'm sure you'll find a way.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.